Welcome to another episode of Inside U Miami Medicine. My name is Amar Deshpande, a gastroenterologist and medical education dean here at UM, and we're thrilled to have you for another exciting conversation. So we're here with Helen Bermudez, who's a graduate of our medical school a few years ago, who just started her GI fellowship, which is a great specialty, not that I'm biased. And your journey has been truly remarkable and inspiring, and I'm sure that her story is going to be invaluable to anyone who's either gone through this experience or is thinking about a career in medicine moving forward. So I'd like to thank the Dean for having me guest host this episode, which focuses on education and learners. And thank you so much, Helen, for coming.
Thank you.
So let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did kind of your earliest life experiences shape your interest in medicine?
Yeah, I was born and raised in a small rural town in Cuba called Aspirations. I grew up there until I was 15 years old. Growing up there, I saw how doctors in my native country took care of patients with such limited resources, and that always inspired me. I didn't have anyone in medicine at that time, even there in Cuba, but I always, either as a patient or a support system for my family, I noticed that passion that they have for medicine, and that was something that I was always really interested in.
So did that spark an interest in medicine very early in life, trying to emulate those physicians that you saw take care of you and your family?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. And tell us a little bit about, maybe not the super nitty-gritty granularity, but in general about the healthcare system in Cuba. So you mentioned having a close relationship with doctors who didn't have a lot of resources, but were able to forge bonds with their patients. Tell us a little bit about kind of your perception at a young age of how healthcare worked in that country.
Yeah, and I didn't know any better, and I had never gone or traveled anywhere, seen anything outside of Cuba. So for me, that was the norm. But once I realized that wasn't, that's when I noticed that there's very limited resources to take care of patients, including things that sometimes there's not even Tylenol to give to a patient, or basic like labs like a CBC. So I didn't notice that at the time, but it's something that I've really been able to reflect back on.
And can you think of any specific instances that occur that kind of maybe were the spark to say, I definitely want to pursue a career in medicine?
There were moments. My dad suffered from mental health disorders, and I have my grandpa had diabetes, and just seeing those interactions of doctors with my family members, and just seeing their passion for medicine and how much they took care of them. That was something that I was pretty interested in. No specific moment, just in general.
Okay, great. And then so as you were going through the equivalent of whatever elementary and middle school and early high school, this was kind of one of the things which you aspired to be a physician?
Yeah, so once I came here from Cuba, I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor, and that spark was always there. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. That was really difficult to kind of envision that dream and that career becoming a reality, since I came here when I was 15. So yeah, that was, it seemed pretty much impossible. So
that you glazed over perhaps one of the most transformational parts of your story. So tell us a little bit about that time when you were 14 and 15 years old, and the decision that your family had made to have you come to the U.S. and kind of what that experience was like, of kind of new country, new experience, new language, all that stuff. Like, give us a little bit of a background on how that was, from what you remember of being 15.
Yeah, I know it was really difficult for sure. I was 50 years old, like you said, and my mom and I immigrated here. I left my dad, my brother, and a lot of my family, my friends, everything behind.
Just the two of you?
Yeah, just the two of us. And I just remember, I remember everything very vividly. It was like I don't know, I would say like a sensory overload almost. Like I had never been outside of Cuba, and this, like, everything was so different, so new. Even the smells were overpowering. Everything was different. The culture, the language, it was definitely a shock. And
so what was your kind of understanding of why that move was made? Did you like talk a lot to your mom about that, or?
Yeah, it was just for a better future. socioeconomic, political reasons, like being in Cuba was not kind of what my family envisioned for themselves, or especially for me. And we came here just to seeking a better future. My dad is still in Cuba, so I still pretty much miss him a lot.
Yeah. And you mentioned sensory overload of a lot of things. I presume, what was your comfort with English as you moved to this country?
Oh, I feel like I can count with one and how many words I knew in English. So it was really hard because I went from like studying, like I wanted to become a physician, right? So I always excelled in school in Cuba, and that was like kind of who I was, like part of my identity. And then all of a sudden I didn't know the language, so I went into the classroom and I didn't understand a single word, and my mom didn't know English either, so she tried, but she couldn't help me with like homework, and we didn't have even like a working computer with internet at home for me to do some of the work because of socioeconomic reasons. And so all of it was really, really challenging, but I'm like, I need to learn. I need to learn the language. I had teachers that were really supportive in high school that I still remember and I still talk to. I had, and just like, working really hard, the studying and cartoons in English really helped.
There you go. That's the secret. That's the secret. Forget Rosetta and Ablin and anything else. It's cartoons. I think this speaks to a lot of people, right? So a lot of us that grew up here can't even begin to fathom the challenges of school, much less not speaking the language. And of course, your story isn't unique, particularly in a place like Miami, but still, nonetheless, just hard for so many of us to kind of understand how you could try to figure out how to learn that equation in math, or that historical point in your class, or in any subject area, not understanding the language. So you mentioned cartoons. You didn't have the luxury of having family who could speak the language well, but and you were already in high school, right? This isn't like you were in elementary school trying to learn like 3 + 3. This is
a teenager
and a teenager. So how was that adjustment? Did you obviously it's a challenge in so many different aspects, but tell us some of the things that you maybe appreciate in retrospect about the value of that experience and how it molded who you are today.
Definitely. It made me resilient. It made me, my whole journey has made me who I am today. And it really, I don't know, it was a bit difficult, but I kept going, and I kept trying my best to keep on going and learning and keeping that dream at sight, and just like never losing sight of that dream.
So still committed to being a physician, even with all these challenges.
I had no idea how, but
so it's a great segue. So how did you even learn about what it meant to be a physician and the path required, which may or may not have been quite different than it was in Cuba? So how did you kind of first figure that stuff out about, okay, now I want to be a doctor, maybe it's going to be a decade from now, but how do I go about achieving that? So how did that process happen and unfold? So cartoons and Google are the secret to life. Got it.
There you go. No, but it was really difficult. Nobody in my family, had no physicians in my family, even like in Cuba or here, so nobody that I could really talk to about that. And it was really tough to figure it out. I just asking a lot of questions and asking people that I didn't even know. And like, I used to go to the doctor and like ask the physician who was taking care of me, how could you do this? How do you get here? How do I become you? Exactly. And doing like my own research, like asking people, that was basically how I figured it out. And then thankfully I had the opportunity to volunteer at Jackson for very early on when I was an undergrad, because I wanted to get more, I wanted to learn more about the healthcare system here and how it worked, and just like how did I actually envision myself doing this here. And that opportunity was life-changing. When I saw doctors taking care of patients, like that same passion and that same drive for advocacy and for the community, but also with resources, that was impactful for me. And I realized this is definitely what I want to do. And then I was able to talk to people there at Jackson and meet some remarkable individuals that helped me guide that journey.
That's great. And actually, it's funny because oftentimes we talk about places like Jackson, the SafeJet hospitals, which are perhaps under-resourced compared to some other places. So even in that context, it was a resource-rich environment, and only a small sliver of the general healthcare sector in the United States. So you finished high school. You mentioned starting to volunteer at Jackson in college. Tell us about how that transition was from high school. So what did you do? How was your decision to where you're going to go to college? It was you and your mom here by yourselves, right? So how did you decide what you were going to do and where did you go?
Yeah, that was really challenging. I had a cousin who had already gone through that process, and she helped me a lot in trying to, and she told me about my MDC honors college. And
that's Miami-Dade College.
And then they had as part of the honors college, they had a full ride scholarship. So I was like, this is what I need to jumpstart my career, my dream. And thankfully, I was accepted and with a full ride scholarship, and they even gave me a stipend. So that allowed me to kind of focus a little bit more on school, because I was even working beforehand at Domino's Pizza and doing all these things. So I was able to focus a little bit more with the opportunity that they gave me.
So in high school, you had, on top of trying to learn everything, also had a job. You said you were working at Domino's.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a plug for any specific company. And then when you got to college, because of the full ride to MDC, you were able to kind of focus on your studies and and working and volunteering at Jackson, et cetera. And so as you started volunteering at Jackson, how did that, and then also taking the coursework required to presumably get to medical school, did that kind of further solidify your interest in medicine? Did it change your perspective on what being a doctor here is? Kind of how did those experiences affect in either direction your path to becoming a doctor?
Definitely. I feel like every single experience that I had, every single kind of challenge just solidified that drive and that passion even further. Volunteering at Jackson, and then at Jackson, volunteering there, I was able to meet Dr. Levy. He's one of the neurosurgeons. He's incredible. He opened his doors in his mind to me and to teaching me and mentoring me and allowing me to have research opportunities. He showed me around the OR and cases and in the clinic. So that was something that was really meaningful to me, and just to somebody took that their time to do that for me. That was so meaningful, and it just made me want to be a physician even more.
So maybe he doesn't even know he's being mentioned out here, but he's the chair of neurosurgery, right? So a plug for him. So that's great that he was able to do that for you. And so now you're finishing at MDC, and what degree that? Was a terminal degree, or did you go somewhere else, or what was your plan after Miami-Dade?
Then I went to FIU.
So would you at MDC? You finished an associate's, or
associates.
Okay, and you transferred or then you moved on to FIU.
Exactly.
And continued your work at Jackson and your volunteering and your interests. And then what was the next step after that?
So FIU, I finished, and at FIU I did have to go back to work because I
didn't have that full run.
Yeah.
So where'd you work? Back to Domino's?
No, it was a roadside assistance place.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I took a gap year from there, and worked as an interventional teacher at a high school. And after that, then medical school. Yay, go you.
And so tell us, you mentioned a little bit about working with Dr. Levy in neurosurgery and others. And so tell us and how kind of supportive folks on the faculty were able to nurture your interest. But how any other ways in which shadowing kind of made you think about what medicine is in the U.S.? Because of course, when you're earlier on, it's aspirational and everything looks like it's kind of all positive things. But you of course saw some of the challenges in medicine as well, particularly working at a place where not everyone has all the resources patient-wise. So tell us a little bit about how those shadowing experiences made you realize how the healthcare system either does or doesn't work efficiently in the U.S.
Exactly, yes. From really early on, even from personal experiences, I didn't have health insurance for a while when I came here. And then kind of seeing that and how that can be the case for a lot of underserved patients and just access to healthcare, I started to realize how that could be a big problem and a big issue for people to even access healthcare. And then how do you navigate that healthcare system? It can be really complex. And I started to realize that, and I started to realize how social determinants of health could really impact patients, just like from personal experience, and then being able to see that on the bigger picture with exactly being at Jackson and kind of having a more direct interaction with the healthcare system here.
So now you're at FIU, you're finishing, and you're thinking about coming here to the medical school. So tell us some of the maybe some of the biggest hurdles or challenges that you faced when you were applying to and preparing to get into medical school.
It was challenging to even apply, honestly, because yes, I had done all of this, but like, how do I spend all this money now and like apply to all the schools and travel around the country to get into medical school? So that's one of the reasons why I took a gap year, just so that I could work and kind of figure that part out, how that was actually going to happen. And yes, like I applied to some programs that I didn't apply to as many as maybe I should have, because I didn't want to spend as much money. So even that was, I remember it being really challenging and trying to like travel and like, how do I make this? And I'm sure that's like for a lot of people it can be really challenging because it's really expensive. But I remember that being particularly challenging for me.
Well, you applied to the most important ones. That's good.
Yeah.
So tell us if you remember about that moment that you found out you got into medical school. What was that experience like for you, your mom, your family? Kind of the culmination. I know you hadn't started medical school yet, but at least the dream had been largely realized that you got into medical school. So what do you remember about that moment?
Oh my goodness, that moment. That was truly a dream come true. I remember Dr. Stein was the one who called me. And then he was like, "Welcome to the U." And I couldn't believe it. I was just like in shock for a little bit. I couldn't even speak. I was so happy, so excited. My husband and my mom were right there next to me, and we couldn't believe it. It was a dream come true, truly.
Yeah, and certainly not just your hard work, but you mentioned your mom several times, and glad you mentioned your husband. So you met your husband early, right, in high school, and so tell us about how he was such an essential support structure for you as you were going through this process.
Definitely, and we'll talk about it, but I dragged him all the way to Boston.
Yes, you did.
When those Boston winters, and he went all the way there for me. So he's been really one of my biggest supporters. Him and my mom, they just have been there by my side every single step. And it was amazing because we met exactly in high school, and we're kids, and we're like, he knew that was my dream. And at first I didn't really believe that dream could be possible, but he really made me like realize how much I loved it and how much that was that I could do it. And he really helped me believe in myself. And not only that, but he supported me through that dream and always being there for me every single step of the way, even going all the way to Boston just into the West. Yeah,
so it really highlights the value of not just you putting in the hard work, but how much sacrifice others made as well. So medical school is when we first met, when you were here in medical school. And so tell us a little bit about the process as people hear your story and how you overcame so many barriers and obstacles to achieve what you have achieved to date, not even including what you're going to achieve in the future. How did you, in medical school, navigate this process? So now you knew that you were going to be a doctor, thinking about what kind of specialty you wanted to go into. You mentioned a couple of people in the past about mentors, but how'd you kind of find mentors in medical school and kind of see what your path would be as you get towards the end of medical school?
Yeah, I remember coming to you, Dr. Espande, when I early on, when I realized I wanted to do internal medicine and that I was interested in GI.
Good choice. Good choice.
And then you were one of those mentors, and I really always appreciated you for that. And then you introduced me to Dr. Abreu, who has been just an amazing human to me and to have worked with and interact with. And she, her being my mentor, allowing me to work in her basic science research lab and in her clinic, and just like meeting her and the incredible person that she is. And I was just in awe, and I was like, I want to be like her.
Many do. And so you found kind of people in your field, right? So a couple of gastroenterologists and others. And so tell us about some of your most significant experiences in medical school that helped shape not only what you wanted to do specialty-wise, but broadly across the kind of features you wanted to serve.
Yeah, so exactly. So that experience, and then also working in docs, that was really meaningful because I was able to see how much of an impact we could make in the community. And as well as the human rights clinic, that was so meaningful to have done that work and working with asylum seekers and trying to help them get an affidavit and kind of supporting them through that process. That was very, very kind of, it shaped a lot of that passion that I had for service and advocacy, and kind of, how do I support this community? How do I give back? And those were some of the really impactful experiences that I had, as well as working in the Latino Medical Student Association and kind of trying to show people and how do I support other students and other everybody else who wants to, this is their dream, and how do they make it happen?
Yeah, so that's great. So as you're now applying, now you think about applying to residencies, I remember we talked a lot during that process, and you're applying all over the country. Obviously, you did great in medical school, so you're a very competitive applicant for the most prestigious programs in the country. As an aside, I often, when people ask about how to prepare the optimal application, the personal statement is an important part of that. And I oftentimes say, if you don't have a particularly compelling story, don't try to pretend you have one. Not to embarrass you, but I think yours is one of the best personal statements I've ever read in my time doing this, because I think it highlights the story that you actually had. You didn't have to fake anything, right? You just told your story, and it was really, really compelling. And so I think it's a good lesson for others that, highlight things that are true and honest to you. And if not everyone has an amazingly compelling story just because of the nature of the cards they're dealt, but you obviously were able to capitalize on overcoming all of these challenges. So that was, I don't know if I've ever told you that specifically, but it was a great personal statement. So then where did you, so then you went to residency. Tell us where you went and how that change was. You already had one experience of leaving a lot of family. So,
Yes.
So what did you end up doing and where'd you go?
Yes, I went to Mass General in Boston. And like I mentioned, I dragged my husband all the way there. I had to meet my mom. My mom and I were inseparable, always together. She was a big supporter, and it was really difficult for her, for me, for all of us, for my family, for me to go so far away from Miami. It was amazing, and it was, such an incredible, it was really difficult at first adapting to that, and everything was different again, but not in the same way. And I knew that I was there I had a purpose, and I just wanted to become the best internist that I could be, and be in an environment that will allow me to continue to kind of with that dream as I always thinking about that dream. And now the dream was I want to become a gastroenterologist. And just being there, meeting so many incredible people who supported me, so many mentors, and learning so much. That was really, really, I don't know, it was great.
Yeah, and of course, a difficult move, but obviously, for those that aren't in the medical field, I know that Massachusetts General is associated was one of Harvard's main teaching hospitals, so one of the premier residency programs in the country. So obviously, a great opportunity. That I remember talking at the time, an opportunity you couldn't pass up. So
yeah.
So you spent 3 tough years there in the sense that you were away from your family, but really getting great internal medicine training. Anything important happen personally with you in your life during residency training?
Yes, definitely. My daughter, Eliana, was born in Boston, and that was a life-changing moment, 3 years and a daughter. and she has changed my life in so many ways, and I'm so thankful that not an easy time though, right? Yes.
To have a kid in your third year of residency.
Yes, I was pregnant second year, and then into third year.
So I think anyone who's started a family, whether in medical school or in training or as a faculty member, kind of encounter different challenges, but challenges nonetheless. Tell us, reflecting back, I know she's young, right, less than a year old, but as you reflect on being pregnant and having a child in your training program, just your reflections on how it is to start a family at that stage in life, and if that has encouraged you to kind of seek opportunities for others about how to kind of go through that experience.
Yes, definitely. Medicine doesn't make it easy to start a family, for sure. And like you mentioned, even every single stage makes it challenging in different ways. In my case, starting a family in residency, the hours are so long. You're in the hospital, you're working so many hours, and you have someone is so demanding, and pregnancy is really demanding of your body as well. And it was just really difficult to kind of, I had to take care of a human,
Yeah,
that
no small task.
and then older humans in the hospital.
Right.
And how do you balance that? How do you balance those two things? And that was definitely something that I struggled a lot of times, and I just had to keep reminding myself to take care of myself, because if I couldn't take care of myself, I couldn't take care of all the older humans in the hospital, and I couldn't take care of my daughters, and it was definitely challenging. And I hope that the healthcare system eventually makes it a little easier for women to start a family in training. And I honestly don't know how they could do that, because I know that training, it's demanding, and you have so little time, so much to learn. But I feel like there's ways that could be a little bit more, more supported.
Well, I have no doubt that you're going to be one of the people pushing that agenda, which is great and really important. So now to kind of start closing the loop and coming full circle, now you're at the end of residency, and you're thinking about your applications for GI fellowship, which is where you circled back. At least one of your options was coming back here to the University of Miami. So tell us a little bit about how you saw that opportunity, and I'm sure you had great opportunities in a lot of places coming from such a great residency program, and how you ultimately decided to come back to Miami for your fellowship program, which you just started about 4 weeks ago.
Yes, go you, right? Full circle, exactly. It felt like coming back home, and it felt right. It felt like the next step for me, and it's like not only coming back home because of my family, the rest of my family being here, and being around family, but also because Miami was always home, and it's where that dream kind of actually started. And that patient population that I could serve here, that was something that I was really missing, and it really needed to have again. And that underserved community and just Spanish-speaking population, I really missed a lot, and I really wanted to have that training here and be around the people that I met here.
Well, it's only been about a month, so we haven't beat you up too much yet, but we're looking forward to working with you the next almost 3 years. So as you, of course, you're early in your training in fellowship, but you'll be done before you know it, just like the other phases of your training. As you reflect back on the totality of what we've discussed over the past 25 minutes or so, what advice would you have for people that are aspiring to a career in medicine, particularly those from underserved communities or people that think that they have too many obstacles in front of them they couldn't overcome because they weren't handed a lot of things that maybe they feel others were? If you kind of encapsulate in like a nugget or two, what advice you'd give to them, what would you say? A young you, what would you tell a young you?
To not give up. I'm glad that I didn't give up. And just keep on going. Find mentors, find people that you can talk to, and that could be, you never know who could become your mentor. So talk to people, ask questions, and keep on going.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has really been an incredible opportunity for you to tell your story, and I'm sure it's really impactful to all of those that are listening. So thank you all for joining, and stay tuned for another edition of Inside U Miami Medicine.